Welcome everyone to the show. We are live here for the weekly crypto recap show where we go over all of the latest news in the past week in crypto. I'm absolutely delighted to have Crypto Blakely and Zaphoid here on the show today. Welcome back, guys.
Hello. Happy to be here.
Hey everyone, it's a beautiful, wintry, icy mix Friday here.
Icy Mix Friday, that's what we love. So again, just a huge shout out to Crypto Insider. So as you guys know, I now have a partnership with Crypto Insider, which I am super pumped about. So we're drawing a lot of these articles straight from their website. And of course, I will be putting a link in the description for all of these articles. So that if you want to learn more about this, then you can go there and read up about all the stuff that we're talking about. Because we've got some pretty fun stuff to talk about today. Some things that also we have been... we've been sort of building up to over a period of weeks, actually. Different things involving Mt. Gox, different things involving Quadriga. So we'll be updating you on all of that today. But yeah, Crypto Insider. And so make sure you guys all check out those links and read out about all the stuff that we don't have time to cover, because it's a great resource for all of your crypto news if you wanted to keep up to date in the crypto space. So on that note, let's start here. I want to start with Mark Karpeles. Mark Karpeles, he was the person who ran Mt. Gox, and then there's been this ongoing court case in Japan where they're trying to figure out, okay, so what do we actually charge him with? What was he guilty of? How do we redirect the remaining funds back to consumers, etc., etc. So last night we had some breaking news. I was actually following Yuji Nakamura's Twitter, and I'll post links to that as well. But basically, he posted breaking: Mt. Gox's former head, Mark Karpeles, found guilty by Tokyo District Court, sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison. More details to follow, but it sort of transpired that the sentence is suspended. He may not have to serve time in prison. It's like an ongoing thing that we're sort of getting clarity of as we go. And basically, Mark Karpeles was found not guilty of embezzlement, which is interesting, but has been found guilty of tampering with financial records. The idea being that they seem to rule that there was no malicious activity there, and that the tampering was to kind of cover up that funds were not actually there. So what do we think about all of this?
It'd be nice if this was over with. I'd love it if this is the last time we heard about Mt. Gox in the news, but that's probably just not going to be the case. It's nice that it seems that he's not actually going to prison, since it's a suspended sentence and he just can't break any laws over the next 4 years, which I hope he'll be pretty good about doing.
Yeah, I like that. They said, well, so clarify that for viewers. The court said he's not allowed to do anything illegal over the next 4 years, or he'll go to prison. And it's like, well, as opposed to everyone else who is allowed to do illegal things over the next 4 years.
I think it's more of a, if you screw up at all, you're going to prison immediately. You don't even need to be found guilty, whatever that other thing is, technically speaking. So he just needs to keep his nose clean for the next 4 years, and which I'm happy he's not going to prison. I don't think he should have. The record tampering was essentially to make it seem like the hackers weren't taking money because he was putting his own Bitcoins in the exchange to cover what was getting lost.
And when we say hackers, are we talking about this, the malleability and the transaction ID? Is that where all the funds went missing, or was there some other break that happened?
I thought there were a few different, issues with the site. I mean, it was really just a lot of issues with the site itself, that it just wasn't as secure as it should have been when it was having as much attention as it was. And they said he recovered about a fourth of the 850,000 Bitcoins, which is where a lot of the other drama is coming from, of course. But basically, he just hid the fact that they were missing, both by just hiding it and by putting his own Bitcoins onto the exchange and making it seem like, accounting-wise, that wasn't happening. So they basically got him for not being honest with his users.
Interesting. So anything else that we want to add there? I mean, I've sort of been following Mark Karpeles in a different capacity. I don't know if anyone else has read or listened to the Railroaded podcast about Ross Ulbricht, about his involvement there with Silk Road. it's really fascinating, you know, all the stuff that was also going on around the same time as Mt. Gox. So if anyone hasn't listened to that, I would love to do an episode kind of really going through what they're talking about on that show, because it doesn't put Mark Karpeles in a bad light. Like I don't know if anyone else, like a lot of people on the internet especially saying, well, Mark Karpeles, it doesn't seem like he's a bad guy, it's just clear, it seems like he was kind of incompetent. The court said like the files everything was very messy, like they're talking about how disorganized it all was. Like this was very bad, we had dishonorable, you're so messy, all of this record keeping that you've been doing. But it doesn't seem to, like, a lot of people seem to think, well, it's not malicious, you know, just kind of incompetence. But then I kind of think, I mean, I've come to think of Mark Karpeles in a different light, just from the stuff that's happened in the railroaded case. But I would love to know other people's thoughts about all of that, if anyone has anything to add.
Well, it'd be worthwhile to talk about this and figure out exactly where we still are. I mean, there's all those still Mt. Gox coins that are floating around and the addresses we know about. I haven't checked on that site recently, but there's still a lot sitting there theoretically waiting to be sold, which, yay.
And they're like, I mean, all the money's sitting there waiting. And the thing is that they have someone in charge of distributing that, but nothing has moved. Like, I would love to see people be made whole. And then you have someone else who was, you know, given $5 million to go and start this offshoot of Mt. Gox elsewhere. And then now he's countersuing to say like, well, I want some of this money that has been recovered from Mt. Gox because I lost this opportunity cost of, I have this opportunity cost of having this deal, and then it fell through because Mt. Gox fell through and all of this. So he is kind of wanting to take money away through this lawsuit from the people who actually lost money on Mt. Gox. And meanwhile, I'm wondering like what happened to the $5 million that this guy was given to do all of this stuff. So it's like this strange thing going on.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this, but I've never really followed up with the Karpeles case. I didn't have any cryptocurrency stored on Mt. Gox, thank goodness. That wasn't a thing that happened to me. But I did hear you mention Ross Ulbricht. I just want to say # free Ross. If everybody,
# free Ross.
Yeah, two life sentences in 40 years is too much. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
It's ridiculous. So here, so Quoine Lab apparently increases the Mt. Gox claim from 75 million to 16 billion. This was back in February. So Quoine Lab is a business that apparently they what's it say here? So they sued the company for breach of contract. Is the idea that they had this deal that they were going to that take over basically American customers of Mt. Gox, and it never happened, so now they're suing. And I kind of feel like they should just walk away from that. You know, there are a bunch of people that lost a huge amount of money through Mt. Gox. It doesn't seem like Quoine Lab lost money in Mt. Gox. They just kind of lost an opportunity to do this thing. So it is a breach of contract. I feel bad for them, but also I do want to see the people who lost money in Mt. Gox be made whole. And they're not going to be made whole. They're only going to get like a percentage of what they had in there anyway. I don't want to see them receive even less because the Mt. Gox estate has to, you know, pay out all this extra money for lawsuits.
Yeah, it's a big mess, and that's the problem when, you know, I mean, we're talking 5 years later now, and you know, you've lost a quarter of the Bitcoin, or 75% of the Bitcoins, you've only recovered a quarter of them, so that by itself means nobody can actually be made whole. I know a while ago they were talking about reimbursing them based on the USD value or the fiat value at time of the theft, and that, you know, and that would leave him with a whole bunch of Bitcoins, and it just all kinds of crazy and messy, and it's just things that we have to work through as part of the crypto world about how we're going to handle these sorts of events moving forward. And I guess hopefully they don't take 5 years to resolve in the future.
Right. Let's move on. I want to talk about Tether. So we've covered Tether a lot on this show and talked about like Tether in relation to other stable coins as well, and talked about how they've had issues in the past with auditors and people basically having the ability to say like, I'm going to put my name on it. I can tell that they have funds to cover the claims that we have against, like have enough reserves in our account to cover all of the Tether that we've issued. And it seemed like, okay, things are fine, but like the point is Tether was really adamant. So like it's 1-for-1, one Tether, $1, it's all there, and they're kind of adamant about that for a long while. They just changed their terms of service. So now basically the claim here is it says that every Tether is always 100% backed by our reserves, which include traditional currency and cash equivalents, and from time to time, which may include other assets and receivables from loans made by Tether to third parties. So the idea would be that they're waiting, that they basically have collateral, or they have promised earnings, like they've lent out the money, but have the promise that money would be returned, and once that money is returned, then they could credit Tether. So it's kind of like, I mean, I asked Caitlin Long about this morning on Twitter. So like, is this rehypothecation? Is this considered rehypothecation? Like, would this be legal in Wyoming? I mean, a lot of institutions do this, right? I mean, every bank does this. It's not a new thing. But it is very different. It's like a 180 from what they were saying before. $1 equals 1 Tether. So what are your thoughts?
Can I jump in here real quick?
Sure.
At which point did we as a cryptocurrency community decide that, what we really need is a cryptocurrency based in the thing that we're trying to get away from? And then on top of that, like, completely ignore the fact that the Federal Reserve will print out money out of thin air. And we're sitting here talking about like our incredible connection with this Tether idea from 1-to-1. Like, I get their change. I get that this is significant, and also it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It just sounds like they're just saying we have some assets that could equal the amount that it was worth previous, but now it isn't, but maybe it is at some point, time to time, right? So it's just odd to me that at some point in the recent past, we decided, what we need is a cryptocurrency that's backed by the thing we're trying to get away from.
Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me because, I mean, crypto is so volatile that if you want to stay within cryptocurrency, because, I mean, there's so much friction moving between crypto and fiat. The payment providers don't make it easy. Banks don't make it easy. So if you can still hedge and with US dollar and find a way to leverage this stability that we've seen in the US dollar and still be reaping the benefits of cryptocurrency, then just moving in and out, like between Tether and Bitcoin, is a lot easier than moving between Bitcoin and US dollar.
Yeah, but there's got to be a limit. There's got to be a ceiling, right? So if you reach that ceiling of USDTs, right, all of a sudden that is now worth more than $1, right? It should. If everyone that was in Bitcoin decided I'm selling out to Tether, you should see a price that should push it up, because they're not buying and selling more United States dollars in their reserve. They don't even have to prove their reserve, apparently. Like, this is nuts.
They claim they are buying and selling for US dollar. That's why you do see Tether go up to $1.02, $1.03 sometimes, but then usually come back down, or go down to 96 cents, 90 whatever cents. So,
but what's stopping me, without having to show like an audit trail of a third-party audit, what's stopping me from starting a USDT2 and then just saying I have all the money in stocks, and then when it goes above $1, I just make more of them, and when it goes below $1, I just destroy some of them and just say that I have a backing?
Well, there's nothing to stop you doing that. Yeah, there's nothing to stop you doing that.
This is absolutely crazy.
But you're taking a huge risk there, because you never know, like, if it goes up and you start buying more, but then it goes up a whole bunch, like, and then it like crashes. It's like really hard to predict the market, and so either way they're going to be taking a risk, whichever way they're betting there.
But with Tether, you got to realize the environment in which Tether started back in 2017. Nobody really knew what the rules or the tax laws were going to be, so everybody thought that by using Tether, they could get away from it being a taxable event, like when they used US dollar. So they thought that by trading Bitcoin for Tether, that wouldn't be a taxable event because you're just trading two cryptocurrencies and it was an in-kind exchange. Whereas if you were trading crypto for the US dollar at, say, Coinbase, that would not be an in-kind exchange, and that would be a taxable event. And of course, Coinbase would have the records and give it to the IRS, as we all know.
Like, even though we've lost that benefit, because obviously it's a taxable event when you do anything at all, when you think about Crypto. Yeah, it's a taxable event.
Taxable event. Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
Oh, I've been thinking about it way too much. So there's still benefits though, right? Because I mean, there are huge fees associated with going in and out of US dollars and wire transfers and all of this thing. So I mean, it still does make sense, but it is just interesting that they were really adamant before about talking about how they, you know, we're holding all the assets and absolutely got everything there, and now they're saying, well, actually, we're using those reserves for other purposes, and we still back it with, you know, debt instruments, but it's still kind of there. Like it's a very far removed from what they first said.
This is by definition fractional reserve banking. I mean, there's no denying it anymore. I mean, this is what it is. They've admitted it. I'm not saying they have a 5% reserve like most real banks. Like, dear God, I hope they have more than that. But it is fractional reserve banking that is less than 100% reserves. So,
and it's like what Caitlin Long was saying to me in my live stream with her recently. She was saying, you know, when she's talking to a lot of these institutions, and they were saying, Caitlin, why would Wyoming make rehypothecation illegal? Why would they want this to not be allowed? Like, we make a ton of money by doing this. This is how we make all of our money. So it's absolutely no surprise that Tether is doing this, and it would be no surprise if like every large exchange is doing this, every large custodial wallet is doing this. Like, I mean, it's an easy way to make money, and in most places it's perfectly legal to do so. So I guess it's just kind of startling to see that big shift, and I guess we now have to kind of take a step back and talk about Tether in terms of their new terms of service, because it is no longer clear that they would have all of the funds right on hand in a very liquid way should people want to redeem their Tether for US dollars.
Let's do a bank run on Tether. I'm all for it.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's so I just got a let me pull that up so people can see that. I just got a power chat from Dragon Wolf Tech. Thank you so much, Jason. He has sent $5 in Bitcoin and says, the reason I don't like stable coins is because of the counterparty risk involved. If you're going to deal in stable coins, why not just get a credit card? And that's a really interesting point. I mean, we're always talking about counterparty risk in crypto, also talking about how Bitcoin only became a thing because there was no counterparty risk. There was nothing that needed to be redeemed for your Bitcoin. It wasn't backed in gold. You know, there's no central organization that is liable if they don't have the reserves and everything. And that's what made Bitcoin prosper, right? It was decentralized, had none of these focal points of a counterparty to shut down. Then something like Tether really does, I mean, it has that central focal point. It has that counterparty risk. There's a possibility that your Tether may not be there. So it's just important. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just a different kind of thing than we were thinking of before with this idea of 100% reserve. So we just have to be aware of that when using these assets, of what they actually are.
Yeah. And I'll be completely honest. I mean, me personally, I've lost a lot of fiat value by not using these stable coins because I don't like the counterparty risk. I don't want to be pegged to fiat, yada, yada, yada. But you know, traders use this all the time. I mean, if you look at any of the USDT pairs with anything on like Binance or whatever, you know, the Binance is getting fiat exchange, but nobody really cares that much because they have the Tether. They have USDT, they have TUSD. I think they have USDC now. But still, USDT, even though there's all these competing stablecoins out there, USDT is still the most voluminous of all of them. And what was it last on CoinMarketCap? I mean, theoretically, Tether's the number 9 coin on CoinMarketCap, currently worth $1.01, with $2 billion worth of Tether having been issued.
Yeah. And honestly, there's so many arbitrage opportunities between the different stablecoins, even, or between stablecoins and Bitcoin, and stablecoins and US dollar. And I mean, it has provided a great financial tool for people. So we got to keep that in mind. But again, like, things are changing. Make sure you're always keeping up with the terms of service, because it's not always going to be the same. You know, none of these things remain stagnant. Things are always changing. So just make sure you know what you're dealing with.
Yeah, no, and I honestly, I don't feel like it doesn't seem reasonable to me for a company to like USD Tether, right, to be able just to change their terms of service. Like, up until this point, we all thought it was 1-to-1. So I guess now the free market should be able to compensate. There should be more coming in that actually have 1-to-1 with some kind of third party non-fired auditing system or company organization. I'm waiting to see that. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on here. I want to talk a little bit. Let's pull this up. This one's fun. So, I am presuming that everyone saw Quoine's tweet.
Yes.
And discuss.
Oh,
It's just cultural dancing, Naomi. How can you even be upset, right?
no, they're all adults. That's all he has to say is they're all adults, apparently. And yeah, we just believe him, Or who are we going to, trust? Our lying eyes?
They're all of age.
Yeah, I'm sure they are all of an age.
So does anyone, I'm not sure whether anyone watching doesn't know what happened, but Calvin Ayre tweeted a photo, and the picture was of him surrounded by all of these bikini-clad women. The fact is that they don't all look like women. Maybe they are, maybe they're all legal, but I mean, it doesn't look like they're all over 18, and so there's been a lot of kind of outrage about why this man's sitting there with his alcohol in his chair going like this, surrounded by these weird, like, so it kind of seems like, I don't want to say it makes him look like a pedophile, but that's what some people have been suggesting.
At least pedophile, whatever they call the.
And I mean, there's like, because apparently they were like dancing, there's like lots of twerking from what looks like some underage people, but he's absolutely assured people that, this photo's been weaponized because he likes BSV, people are attacking him for no good reason, all these people are over 18. So that's sort of where we're at now.
No. I mean, even John McAfee called him out.
Yes, he did.
The dude who was holding 2 guns and is snorting coke off a hooker's ass is telling you, maybe you should slow down and not walk down this path. Maybe you should listen. Maybe you should take a deep look at what you're doing and reevaluate it. Because there's not a lot of things John McAfee will call anybody out on. But this is apparently one of them.
Yeah, I think it may be legal what he's doing in the area in which he's in. I think the age of consent in the place that he's at, I think is 16.
Yeah, in Cuba it's 16, and you can marry at 14 with parental approval.
Yeah, that's correct. But it's still not okay to like, why live stream that? Why would you even?
I mean, it just seems like poor judgment, right? Because it seems like he made a call about, like, regarding legalities in the jurisdiction where he is. That's not all people should be cognizant of. People also need to be cognizant of how do people in other cultures perceive this. Like, it's always like such a complex thing to navigate, right? And he's put out something that clearly, for a lot of people, especially in America, they're going to look at that and just see him as like a real douchey guy. It wasn't the best PR move for him, right?
If I went to Cuba and married a 14-year-old girl and I put it on the internet for everyone to see, I would assume that most people would be outraged, right? So like, that's just good judgment. Like, don't put that. If you think that's okay and you're in an area in which it's legal, maybe don't, and especially if you're an influencer that holds a lot of power in one small space, maybe don't do that.
Yeah, you know what? Like, it's a country, slavery is still around, right?
Exactly, yes.
Some countries it's okay to stone women.
Yeah.
There are some things that don't translate well across cultures, and it's just important to be cognizant of that. So, bad PR move there, Calvin Ayre, and furthermore, from PR, we can all make our own personal judgment calls about, what he was doing there, and I'll leave that up to all of you to make your own decisions about that. Let's move on to some trading news. So CBOE exchange puts the brakes on Bitcoin futures. So there are a lot of reasons for this. In their report, they basically cited liquidity issues that were a major thing, and they said that they are going to still honor current futures that are out there, but they are pulling the listing for future futures. And also we have to look at the competition that they're facing as well. So CME with their futures, that's obviously going to be a giant competitor. This is a difficult space to navigate, and maybe it's just not ready for multiple major exchanges trading futures. So what are our thoughts on this being put on hold?
Well, CBOE was, blast from the past, back to 2017 again. CBOE was the first one to launch futures. But while they are, a relatively big name in their space, they are tiny compared to CME. So it's expected, and even initially, CME almost right away had more volume than CBOE, and it just maintained that. Of course, it's also important to remember that all this volume is just cash settled. At no point is there actual Bitcoin involved, unlike some of the other futures that are coming up from Backed and some of the others that will be physically settled futures in which Bitcoin will actually be bought and sold in the future process. So this is just, this is typical. I mean, futures are listed and unlisted all the time on the traditional markets at individual exchanges. This isn't a huge deal. This is just not a huge exchange. They were trying to be first to the market and get the market cap and get the activity that way, but a bigger player came along and ate their lunch.
Yeah,
I think that pretty well sums it up. Yeah.
So let's move on. I want to talk about, like we mentioned last week, Facebook Quoine. I'm sure we're all just chomping at the bit, or champing at the bit, I should say, for this new coin that I'm sure we're all going to use from the largest surveillance network in existence. So apparently the Facebook coin could boost revenue by $19 billion. Now, if anyone's looked at the earnings report from Facebook recently, they've not been making some good decisions. It seems like people are leaving the platform in droves. They're not that interested in what Facebook has to offer, and it's getting less and less unpopular. The figures all support this. Now they're looking at implementing their own coin, and so apparently could really boost their revenue. And what are your thoughts on this, guys?
I mean, they made $55 billion in 2018. And something like 90% of that, 95% of that was from advertising. I don't know who's going to go, hey, Facebook coin, I trust them. I don't understand the thought process that would go with that, especially when you can already use other cryptocurrencies in Facebook Messenger and in WhatsApp and some of the others. Though, that being said, maybe Facebook will try to clamp down on those and make it so that you can only use Facebook coin in its own platform. But their investors and the market likes the idea of it because, again, blockchain and cryptocurrency is hip and cool, and they love the idea of Facebook doing something slightly less evil than stealing all your data and selling it, which a cryptocurrency and charging for that is slightly less evil, apparently.
Well,
but
do you guys use Facebook Cash at all?
Well, that's what's so crazy, right? So, I mean, I can send anybody, anyone in the United States, I can send them United States dollars instantaneously for free. For free. I've done it hundreds of times. I can send them 5 cents. I can send them $400. And it gets there like this, as long as there's not some kind of weird hang up at the bank. So I don't really get what the purpose of this Facebook coin is going to be. I really don't get it. The idea is cool. It's neat that it's going to potentially get a lot of other people interested in looking up what cryptocurrencies are, but I don't really see why Facebook would do it. I don't get it yet. And I've read as much as I can on it, and I still don't quite get it. Why would they do this?
Yeah. It's, I mean, one of the things that still tempts me to use Facebook Cash, and I do use it because it's really, really convenient, especially if you go out to dinner with a group of people and there's some people there that you don't know, and you could just find them, create a group chat, everyone adds their friends, and you could just send money and divide up a bill. Super easy. As you said, no fees, instantaneous. The thing is that money is directly linked to your bank account, and the pros of that is that the money goes straight in there. So there's no waiting for that to appear. It's instantaneous, as you mentioned. The downside of that is that it becomes a vehicle for Facebook to track your financial transactions, but they track everything else we do, so why not, right? The thing about having a Facebook coin, it just adds one more layer onto that, right? It might be easier for them, it might be cheaper for them, they don't have to deal with banking fees, etc., but it would mean that maybe I get Facebook coin and I can then, trade that out into USD, right? And I mean, honestly, the amount of accounts where I have stuff kind of sitting there, small amounts, where someone's like, I'm going to pay you in Venmo Cash Square, and you're like, oh, that's that Square Venmo PayPal spin-off, the third iteration of one, and they'll send it there and they'll forget that it's there, and then maybe 6 months later I'll go back in, I'll be like, oh, I have $5 $5. That's kind of cool. But then that's US dollars, I could just transfer it out. I'm so scared of having yet another account where I've got like a shitty coin there that's useless that I never traded back into something that was actually useful. And it's just such a, I mean, there's so much friction there. It's such a time investment. Like, we still don't know how it's going to play out, what they're going to do, but not that exciting.
But that also is what they're hoping to have happen, because that's where a lot of the value comes in, is the time between buying and selling, and the time you hold there is how coins really do maintain their value. And the more people buying and selling and holding for that period is how it maintains value between the buying and selling. So they hope that you'll just leave the money sitting in there for ease of transfer.
I'm just really hoping it's a delegated proof of stake, so that way we can vote for like the president of Facebook with our Facebook coins.
I mean, that would be great. I mean, we can all dream, I suppose.
I'm hoping.
No way.
Let's move away from Facebook and talk about. I won't say it. I won't say it because this is video and everyone can just rewind, and then they always have this. Just fill in the blanks. So, SEC chairman Jay Clayton makes comment about Bitcoin ETF on Fox News. So, I mean, we've been following what Jay Clayton's been saying about all of this stuff. When I interviewed him, he said that basically just presume everything is a security if you're not sure, which is just such a vast overreach and really in contrast to what someone like Hester Pierce from the SEC is saying. But he's made some comments on ETFs. Again, he's talking about how his major concern is that how do we know that current trading is not manipulated? And that's what they were saying at Consensus this year. Consensus Invest this year and last year. Oh my gosh, I can't keep track. That was their main concern. Like, how do we know this market isn't manipulated? Like, what are your thoughts on all of this?
I mean, we know that the markets are manipulated. We know the traditional markets are manipulated. We know the commodities markets are manipulated. And sure, the crypto markets are manipulated. I mean, how many people are fined and go to prison every year for manipulating traditional markets, for manipulating traditional currencies? I mean, we know it happens. So it's not a matter of you can't prove it's not happening. We know it's happening. But so what? It's happening everywhere. It's not like you're shutting down all the traditional markets because we can't prove they're not manipulated. I mean, come on.
I know, it's crazy. It's like this asymmetry of things that are applied to crypto that aren't applied anywhere else in any other marketplace.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it's absolutely, you hit the nail on the head with that one. I mean, every market's manipulated in some way. I mean, just look at brand new cars, for instance. I mean, do you really think that that's the price a car should be? It should be $15,000 to $50,000. It shouldn't be. They put that price there to keep the market from just not being worth anything, right?
Well, I think that's a great point when you say, is that the price that it should be? What price should something be? Like, you need some sort of dictator to determine that stuff, right?
Price is just what the market's willing to pay for it. And
exactly.
How do you manipulate something unless you're forcing other people to sell? That's actually, Naomi, you just opened up a can of worms there. Because that's real weird.
Well, I mean,
that's the knowledge problem. I mean,
it drives me crazy.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Unless you steal everyone's stuff, then where is the manipulation in the first place? How can a market be manipulated unless you're coercing them?
Yeah, I think that especially in legal frameworks, they like to drop these phrases around, like anti-competitive. When you really look at it, like, how do you define these things? When Microsoft was going through their big antitrust lawsuits, by the time that they actually got through, Apple had completely overtaken them. It's not that they weren't competitive. It just took a while for someone to come up and get to their level, right? And so, like, there are all these things about manipulation. Like, how do you define this stuff? It's such vacuous terms,
Absolutely. Wow.
Anyway.
Yeah, and it's just, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, if you have it and you're selling it, you can't manipulate it. It's a fact. It's something that happened.
Yeah, and
again, you can't prove a negative. Prove it didn't happen. I mean, you cannot prove that something is not manipulated. What they can do is produce evidence that it is manipulated beyond a certain acceptable level.
Exactly.
But they haven't bothered to do that. They just say, "Oh, you can't prove it's not manipulated." I'm like, fine, prove it's anything not manipulated. You cannot prove that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So once again, the SEC has provided no more clarity at all, which has been their trademark so far. Let's move a little on. I want to talk about this company that I don't know how to pronounce. We're going to call it Quinoa. I think it's pronounced Quoine, but with a Q-U. It's like Quoine. If anyone knows how to pronounce that, you let me know. But we'll call it quinoa because quinoa also is ridiculous to pronounce. It doesn't look anything like the spelling. Basically, they're liable for reversing Bitcoin trades worth millions. This happened 2 years ago, and they're based in Singapore, and apparently they're liable for a breach of contract and breach of trust. So any more thoughts on this?
So what happened here is that a market maker, B2C2, made several trades on the exchange in which they managed to sell ETH at an exchange rate of 10 Bitcoin per ETH. So that's somewhat higher than the actual market price of ETH. So this appears to be related to a bug on the exchange, and then I'm sure that B2C2 realized, hey, this is cool. We should probably get this Bitcoin off the exchange right away before they figure this out. And so they had managed to sell 309.2 Ethereum for 3,092 Bitcoin. And then the exchange went, holy crap, what did we just let happen? And they reversed the trades back in August, apparently, of 2017. So this has been going on for a while. And B2C2 said, hey, you can't just do that. You can't reverse the trades. This was a trade. Your platform said it was complete. I withdrew the coins. You can't just reverse that. And they won. And so it looks like Quinoa Exchange.
Quinoa Exchange.
Well, yeah, they're going to have to pay up something.
Wow.
Basically, they're not settled on how much they have to pay it at this point, it looks like. So it's just a damages, but we'll see what they end up settling on for actual monetary value. Because at the time they did it, this was in April of 2017, and Bitcoin was only $1,300 then. And it's a lot of money if Quinoa Exchange has to pay that to B2C2.
Yeah.
Any exchange that starts with a QU, I'm just going to avoid from now on.
That's okay. I mean, for the longest time as a kid, whenever I never heard anybody actually say quinoa, so I always just pronounced it quinoa.
Same.
Really?
College before I figured that out.
Oh, you guys are funny.
I was a full-grown adult saying it like that.
I think this exchange is pronounced Quoine.
I'll go with it. Yeah.
But let's stick with quinoa because it's more fun. Let's move on, and I do want to say a huge thank you to Semt. They sent through a power chat saying interesting talk. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. If anyone else wants to support the show in any way, then Bitbacker is the place to do it, and they don't take 30% like Google does. So check that out, and there's lots of awesome content creators on there that you can have a look at. A lot of people that are worthy of your support. So have a look around the platform and let me know what you think. Let's move on. We're talking about Texas. Apparently there's this new law, the cryptocurrency law, that is very oddly drafted, and they have these strange privacy demands. So Chris, do you want to talk us through some of this?
Well, this is a very weird law. It's House Bill 4371, and it's just part of Texas, so this isn't nationwide or anything. It's basically like a single page, and it just says that digital currencies, the state can't exchange digital currencies unless they are verified identity digital currencies, which means a digital currency that allows the true identities of the sender and the receiver to be known before a person has access to another person's digital wallet. I mean, that's the exact verbiage from the bill. And that doesn't make any sense with how any currency works. Like, if I'm to give you $1, I can't verify your identity. If you're going to charge my credit card, I can't verify your identity. This just doesn't, it's not how it works. Or is it just going to be simple like, hey, is this your address? Yes. Okay, I verified your identity. I mean, what are they really looking for here? It's
Wait, Chris, are you suggesting that this bill might have been drafted by bureaucrats who have no understanding of how the tech works?
I mean, I don't want to jump to conclusions.
But that never happens.
That.
Bureaucrats making laws about things they don't understand. It blows my mind.
First
What
time
this
for
looks to me
everything.
is, yes, somebody in the state, probably a banker in the state or somebody in the regulatory framework of the state said to this guy, hey, pass this bill that, introduce this bill that says this so we can do whatever the hell we want to cryptocurrencies.
I think that's what they've done. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think that they just created this kind of amalgous.
Mhm.
I mean, this doesn't mean anything, but it could mean a lot of things. I mean, unless you're in court trying to defend something, like, you don't know what this means until someone tells you you've broken it.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of these vague laws. And it pisses me off. I've been actually considering moving to Texas for no income tax and freedom, whatever.
There's always Tennessee. You could always just move on over here.
I was looking at Wyoming, but apparently it doesn't exist, so now I'm screwed.
It's hard to move someplace that's not real.
I know,
Well,
right?
since Utah just introduced an 86% tax on e-cigarettes, if you just move to the western part of Wyoming, which is just a couple hours east of SLC, and open up an e-cig shop, you'll probably make a lot of money.
Is that our next business venture, or are we doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. But since there's like 5 people that live in Wyoming, and there's a lot of snow there and wind, I was looking at other zero tax states too.
So I want to talk a little bit about Quadriga. We've talked about Quadriga before and kind of kept people updated on this wonderfully thrilling unfolding of all kinds of sagas. As you know, if anyone doesn't know what Quadriga is in a nutshell, it is an exchange based in Canada, and they had a bunch of issues. They were freezing transactions. It seems that they were losing funds somewhere there. And then this CEO mysteriously just died. And then it turns out that the management team reported he had the only access to the private keys that accessed all the money in the exchange. So that's just terrible security there. Now, a lot of people have been suggesting that this person is not actually dead. A lot of people also suggesting that maybe he is dead, but maybe the private keys didn't disappear with him. Management maybe is using that as an opportune time to wipe their hands of a fund that was probably going under. And now we have new news on this. We've heard from the widow of the deceased, and she has actually said that apparently he was mixing personal funds with business funds, but in a way that was trying to help the customers. So apparently there was a legal battle with the bank, and he was trying to make customers whole during this time using his own funds to do so. And in a statement she said, while I had no direct knowledge of how Jerry operated the business, he told me that he'd been putting his own money back into QCX to fund user withdrawals in 2008, while the CIBC money remained frozen. So there were a lot of issues with people being able to withdraw funds. We know that from the history of Quadriga, and apparently he was trying to keep things liquid by using his own money that people could withdraw. She says, I believe Jerry had the best interests of the business in mind and cared for his customers. So what do we know about this legal battle that was freezing accounts?
Well, Canada is not crypto friendly. It is very hard to get between the Canadian dollar and any cryptocurrency. Quadriga, even though it was a reputable exchange, was one of the few ways to actually do it without having to exchange to Euro or USD first.
Yeah.
So he had lots of issues with banks, and lots of other exchanges there have too. I mean, I can't remember the exchange right now, but one of the other, actually no, it was one of the big ATM networks there. The bank actually shut down his personal bank account, his wife's personal bank account, and closed on his mortgage because he was dealing in cryptocurrency. So there were lots of legal stuff in Canada that go on regarding this. So I'm sure there were plenty of legal battles. But from what I was heard, months in advance of this death and loss of all these coins, people would have to wait weeks to get their funds withdrawal. So it always seemed like it was a fractional reserve type situation where they're waiting for somebody else to deposit Bitcoin to allow somebody to actually withdraw it.
Yeah.
And it was, and this whole thing, for one thing, it's interesting because, this is what Mark at Mt. Gox was accused of, is mixing his personal funds with the exchange funds to make people whole. So, but at the same time, this really seems more like hey, we weren't being bad about this. We were just trying to help our users, have sympathy on us. But
well, it does seem that, Quadriga, it's saying that the case that the reason that was frozen was because they couldn't verify that the people who had the money in the accounts actually owns that money. Like, I mean, it's kind of the age-old story about banks dealing with crypto. They're trying to comply with AML, they're trying to comply with KYC, and so, I mean, it just seems like it was a crypto issue, right? And so I kind of feel sorry for the exchange because I don't know too much about their inner workings, and it's all kind of unfolding as we go, and we're reporting on that as we find things out. But all we know is that there was some issues there. People had trouble getting funds out. Some people are speculating that this is because they just didn't have the reserves. And now we've got information that that accounts were being frozen by banks. They did have the money in there, but it was just the banks saying, like, we're protecting ourselves, and so not giving them access to their actual funds. So how much was one and how much was the other, I'm not sure of.
Yeah,
well,
and
you go ahead, man.
Oh, I was just, one of the things, there's a lot involved here. I mean, the RCMP is investigating them. The FBI is investigating them. I was going to make some comment about them riding their moose to track them down, but whatever.
I like it.
With their toque.
Yes, but there's a lot of drama. I mean, I know last week or maybe the week before we talked about how people have tracked down a bunch of the crypto to accounts at Binance, Kraken, Poloniex, and at least one other. And didn't we talk about that, or am I imagining that?
We did. We definitely
Okay.
talked about that, how money was moving beforehand, just prior to the death of the CEO. And there are some strange things, like, I mean, it's, as I said, it's all unraveling. On the one side, it does seem like the banks were causing a huge amount of issue for them. On the other side, it seems like that there was some strange things also going on, especially with money being moved into estates that couldn't be accessed, lots of different things like that. So we will definitely keep you updated with everything that we learn as it's breaking.
Well, has anyone ever figured out what's going on with the cold wallets? Because what I remember before was that the owner died and they couldn't access the cold wallets, and then now they're saying that the cold wallets don't have any funds in them.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that they lost access to these cold wallets. Then they accidentally moved another 500K into the cold wallets that they lost access to. Then it was discovered that the cold wallets had no money in them. It's all very strange.
It doesn't make any sense. None of this adds up. And I don't want to get into the conspiracy theory, but there's a lot of people saying that maybe the owner's not dead, which I believe that he probably is, but people supposedly found spelling errors in the death certificate from where he was at when he passed on. I don't know if any of this is true. All I have to say is this whole thing, from the very beginning to where it is now, is so screwed up. It's nuts. It's nuts. Again, I'm not taking my crypto anywhere that's an exchange that starts with QU. I'm not doing it.
Fair enough, and not just because you can't pronounce it. Let's move on. I just got a power chat. Someone anonymous user sent me $5 in Smart Cash. Thank you so much. They just said Smart Cash has a great new feature which just got released, ATM vouchers, and they sent a link there, which is on your screen. Wait, that way. There, it's got a link there, so you can look at that. And that, if you go to my Bitbacker page, then you'll be able to see that in full. If anyone wants to check that out. Do you know anything about that, Chris?
This is what I was mentioning to you last week about the ATM withdrawal in Switzerland and Portugal, where anybody who has our web wallet can easily withdraw to fiat through these exchanges or send money to people with just a QR code, and they can withdraw directly from the web wallet to a voucher and then use that voucher at the Bitcoin ATM, or I guess I should say Smart Cash ATM, to withdraw fiat.
That's really cool. I like that. So you have to send me pictures of these things being operational and let people know like exactly what these are.
Yeah, there's a video at that Twitter link there, so you can see the whole process in action. And I think they do a neat little funny story behind it too. But
awesome.
It's a very nice video. I mean, it's a very cool feature. I mean, I'll have to go to Switzerland myself one time and do that. As we expand it to other Bitcoin networks, Bitcoin ATM networks, it'll be great because it's a very easy way to send money wherever you want to, easily, quickly, cheaply, as well as get cash from your Smart Cash easily.
Sounds good. Well, huge thank you to whoever the anonymous person was who sent through that. I'll see if I can pull the video up, but no promises there because tech, you know. And so also Streamlabs, if anyone else has issues with Streamlabs, just give me some tips, because I would love some suggestions, or I'll try and pull that up. And in the meantime, let's move on, because I've got a couple more.
This is just a little graphic. I guess the video will be out in a couple hours.
Oh, okay. All right. So I won't bother trying then. Great. I am absolved of my duties. So let's move on. We've just got a couple more things I want to breeze through because we're running out of time. U.S. Treasury sanctions Russian bank over links to Venezuelan's petro. Apparently, a Moscow-based bank had a role in financing Venezuela's controversial petro cryptocurrency. So Evrofinance Mosnarbank is jointly owned by Russian and Venezuelan state-owned firms, and it was basically like an early investor in the petro, and I'm kind of wondering why anyone would invest in the petro. It's a good question to ask, but it does seem that, you know, US has these tight sanctions. They like to keep control of what everyone does around the world, and Russia didn't really want to play by the rules with Venezuela, and so now they're saying that you are conspiring and using this petro and to circumvent and all of this stuff. I don't want to go too much into detail about this, but anyone have anything to add about that?
I mean, on face value, before you consider the idea of what the Venezuelan government there was involved in, like if you didn't look at historical context, the idea of the petro, the idea of a government-ran thing, cryptocurrency backed buying oil, sounds awesome until you realize, like, there's no way that this is actually going to come to fruition or be worth anything or be good to use or be good to even aligned with.
Yeah, because it's like if it's backed by oil. Right, okay. So now you have a counterparty risk in there, and that counterparty is the Venezuelan government that has had such a great track record with finances in the past. So yeah, there's nothing about the petro that really screams trust to me.
No.
Well, let's keep updated with what happens there. And what happens with like U.S. Treasury sanctions. I mean, yeah, U.S. kind of wants control over everything and doesn't like anyone who skirts that. At one thing, I mean, at least it's proving that different types of cryptocurrencies, whether they're centralized or public, they are enabling people to skirt regulations and control from giant governments, giant states. So that's interesting.
Keep in mind, this is really a global economic power struggle. You have Russia, China, and Cuba very much involved in Venezuela and what's going on there. You know, they're moving the Chinese monitoring system and social credit score into Venezuela. Russia's involved there. Cuban troops guard all of Venezuela's generals. You have guard. You know, obviously you're guarding their families quite well, I'm sure. But you have a lot of basically Russia, China, Cuba, and you have the old BRICS of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa working to try to break away from the petrodollar, which is unrelated to the petro crypto. So the petrodollar is how you can only buy oil from OPEC using the US dollar, which is the agreement the US came to with Saudi Arabia years ago. And a lot of people blame a lot of bad stuff on that agreement. But people want to be able to buy oil without having to use the US dollar first. And this petro, and one of the things Venezuela was supposed to be doing is giving a discount to any foreign nation who is buying oil using the petro.
Yeah.
So it's all about breaking away from the centralized U.S. power struggle. If they succeed in that, there might be a lot of chaos. It might cause some big problems for the U.S. dollar, which a lot of people are claiming is somewhat backed by oil. Where really, when we talked about currency value, a lot of U.S. dollar is held by foreign governments for the sole purpose of being able to purchase oil. And that helps maintain its value.
That's where things get weird, right? Because they can, through Forex exchange, I mean, you can trade your currency for a different currency at a different valuation. So if every country in the world dumped all the United States dollars, it would cause that our valuation of our USD to be lower in comparison to other currencies around the world, right?
Well,
so
yeah. I mean, that's what people have been threatening to do for a long time now. You have Germany saying that they're threatening to not use US dollar as the reserve currency. You have different Middle Eastern countries also threatening to do the same. You have Venezuela creating a petro specifically for this purpose. So, I mean, it does seem like maybe the reign of US dominance could be coming to an end here. We'll just have to see how this plays out.
I wouldn't say it's coming to an end as much as it is certainly under attack.
Yeah.
And
We have a lot of weapons, I think, is the reason why it's not going to go anywhere.
And a lot of people do believe its days are numbered, and I wouldn't necessarily say they're wrong. There's a lot of good reasons to believe that, but
And let's not even go into talking about the national debt and how they're going to get out of that. I mean, they either tax it away or they print a whole bunch of money. If they print the money, then that topples the US dollar by their own hand. They don't even need a tax from Germany or the Middle East or Venezuela to do this.
The debt is one thing. It's the unfunded liabilities that's the real kicker, because that's 5 times the debt.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. I want to quickly run through some of these things. So, people talking about the Lightning Torch. We talked about this in the past. It is getting harder to use. Liquidity issues there. It's kind of funny. There's about like $150 on there now, and so it's there are some issues there, but I think we dedicate a whole episode to Lightning Torch and Lightning Network in general, and just talk about some of these issues. A Lightning developer posted a tweet the other day, I think it was yesterday or the day before, talking about how, no, it was on Wednesday, talking about how, people are having issues with Lightning Network. These are the reasons why, and they're kind of listed like 6 big reasons that were kind of significant, but I think the tweet was sent in exasperation, like, oh God, so I don't have to answer every single tweet, if it doesn't work, it's one of these reasons. But then there's this comprehensive list of all of these things that could potentially go wrong. So it's kind of interesting, but let's spend a whole episode talking about that, because I think it's important to look at the pros and cons of this network in a more comprehensive way. Let's keep moving on. We talked last week about how mining pool, Spark pool, which is an Ethereum mining pool, they actually froze a transaction fee because there was $300,000 transaction fee that they thought was sent accidentally, and so they froze that. Turns out it was an accidental sender. The sender reached out to them and said, hey, this is my money, it was accidental, can you send it back? So they actually came to an agreement that they would halve it. So Spark Pool just got a $150,000 transaction fee, which, I mean, there are good things and bad things about this, right? Like, this is a non-refundable transaction. This person sent it, they made a mistake on their own, they sent the money, it's gone, they no longer have it. That was a mistake that they will learn from, because that's a lot of money. Now, on the one hand, like, the onus is on the individual to protect their own property. On the other hand, keeping $150,000 seems like this crazy thing to do. But let's keep that in context. They didn't have to return any of the money, and they chose to. So there's a lot of, I give them a lot of credit for that,
Yeah, but it does show in the crypto network that you have to be responsible for what you're doing, and they're still very easy for people with a whole bunch of crypto who theoretically should know what they're doing to make very basic mistakes. And this just shows the need that we still have in the crypto space for more, easy buttons and grandma interfaces.
Absolutely.
I'm really glad you guys shared this article, because I thought this was, the last time I had read this article, it was basically putting into the context of someone trying to launder money, saying, well, we can send this with a high transaction fee, send it to my own miner somehow. That got weird. And then that miner be able to collect their funds without having to do any kind of KYC, because they're just mining that block. And now that I read this, it makes so much more sense that somebody was just, they got fat fingers and just goofed the keyboard.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty
That's all I
dramatic
gotta say.
exchange.
I would just throw up for an entire week if I did that.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I want to move on. Just like a couple more articles I just want to breeze over. So Quoine crypto exchange is shutting down on court orders. It's a Hong Kong-based cryptocurrency exchange, and they're shutting down after an unsuccessful attempt to recover funds that were basically lost with a dispute with their former payment services provider. So the idea is that their bank started to say, well, no, we're not going to deal with you anymore, and then they held a bunch of their funds. So they found a new payment processor in Europe, and they thought that they were good to go. But then it seems that because a lot of their funds were unrecoverable, now the courts are actually saying that they have to shut down. So, right, is it the courts that are saying that? Yeah, courts orders. So, I mean, that's such a tragedy there. Like payment providers screwing with other companies and just keeping money that isn't theirs.
Yeah, and just also keep in mind that Gatecoin was hacked, and apparently since 2016 has lost about 185,000 ETH and 250 Bitcoin. So,
Wow.
there's plenty of issues there as well. But this is just, more of these exchanges shutting down this year. I mean, I guess I don't have a tally. I should probably make a list somewhere of how many exchanges have had to shut down this year, but it's more than a handful right now.
Yeah, more than a handful. Let's keep going. We've got Basel, so cryptocurrencies pose risk to banks, warns Basel committee. So as we know, I mean, Switzerland has this strange relationship with cryptocurrency. A lot of people see Zug in particular as being this crypto bastion over there. It's like crypto valley, I think they call it, because there are a lot of startups that moved over there because basically they had a mayor there that was very favorable, open-minded towards cryptocurrency, a lot of good laws. But Switzerland in general hasn't necessarily proven to be as open-minded, and they're very, very conservative. As we know, like they have a long history as being the center of the banking world, right? And in order to create that reputation, there's a lot of security that needs to go into that. There's a lot of safety requirements that need to be like considered. They're not big risk takers, and so now them coming out and saying that cryptocurrency poses a risk to banks, and it's not surprising at all that they've come out and said that.
Well, this is the same week that the ECB, wow, just too many three letters, has stated that they're going to renew quantitative easing. So cryptocurrencies is not what's going to bring down the banking system in Europe. It's going to be their own debt. I mean, right now we have the commercial industrial loan activity has increased 92% since the bottom of the recession, which is more than it's increased between recessions in the 90s or the 2000s. And we're cryptocurrency may save a lot of people from the results of this and may end up recovering faster from the upcoming crash, but this is not what's going to introduce a structural failure. Though it is interesting how they're bringing this up now, and maybe they will try to blame the next recession on somebody doing something stupid with crypto. But it's just way too small right now to carry that blame. I mean, we were talking about Forex exchange earlier. I mean, the whole, according to, CMC, the 24-hour volume is $29 billion for all of cryptocurrency, whereas the daily 24-hour volume for Forex exchange is almost $6 trillion. I mean, crypto is so small that there's no way they could effectively blame cryptocurrency for any of these, for the crash I feel is going to be happening at some point here. But
won't that be a nice scapegoat, though, right? If crypto grows to a certain point, and the inevitable crash, which we're always talking about, and you talk to any Austrian economist, and they're like, "Oh God, like we're in serious trouble here." Yeah, and so I mean, before the scapegoat was the free market, right? And now the scapegoat might well be, cryptocurrency, and that's why we need to ban it because this is a danger and all this. Let's not talk about all the dodgy things that are going on in government policy, in the direct line of credit that all of these private companies have to the Federal Reserve, and the policies of the Federal Reserve itself. Like, let's not talk about any of that, how that played a role in the crash. But cryptocurrency...
Well, I mean, they still blame the last crash on bank deregulation, as if they can identify any deregulation that had anything to do with the systemic issues behind the last crash.
I was about to say this very same thing. It's absolutely not. It's maddening. It makes me crazy because there's no way. Even if that was the case, which I don't believe that it is. Even if that was the case, I would give someone $100 to show me how do you even prove that one single variable even had any impact on any of what we're talking about, aside from just saying nonsense just to fill up empty time.
But that's the thing. The same way that deregulation was the boogeyman for 2008, then maybe they're setting it up with statements like this. They could just be testing the waters for how much people will accept that as a reason.
Nuts. You're right, though.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might not be a thing, but it feels like that's what they're trying to do.
So two more articles that I want to just quickly go over. We have run out of time, but there's a lot of stuff. So Bitcoin markets at the moment. Do you want to just quickly cover this, Chris?
It was interesting. Where was I seeing this? Basically, Bitcoin itself had the most volume since near its 10-month high, basically. So the volume picking up, maybe that's good for prices, maybe not. I hate prognosticating about prices because that's not who I am. I'm a fundamental guy. I'm not a day trader. But overall, we're seeing a lot of players leaving the markets. We're seeing a lot of big news, even some negative news, and we're still bouncing along in this zone here, and the volume is pretty decent. So overall, I think that's a positive sign for at least the strength of where we are right now. But we'll have to see where that goes. I like the fact that we do see this volume and we're not going down with this volume. So yay.
Yep, so that's good news. And just to finish up here, Bitcoin versus Ethereum, the ideological divide. So this was a great article in Crypto Insider that if you haven't read, it's a pretty comprehensive one and a really interesting read. So if you guys wanted to check that out, then please do. But before you do that, Blakely, do you want to just give us an overview of basically what this covers? Because I think it's really interesting.
Absolutely. So the idea is that the overall population between Ethereum, the people that like Ethereum, the people that like Bitcoin, there's a lot of ideological differences between those two groups. You can see that in Jameson Lopp and in Vitalik Buterin. I hope I didn't say that wrong. So there's a lot of differences. It seems like the people that are behind Ethereum are more okay with taxation, whereas the people that are behind Bitcoin are more interested in not being taxed and being controlled by their own entities. So there's a lot of information there. If you're interested in taking a look at it, it can take you a little bit to get through it. But there's a lot of really cool information about Jameson Lopp and Vitalik and the ideas behind Ethereum and Bitcoin. I think I could probably talk about that for another 15 minutes, but there's no need right now.
One of the things about this article, or at least about Vitalik's tweet, that I wanted to bring up is that he was basically tweeting that wallet developers should introduce a small tax on any outgoing transactions that use either multi-send or redirecting fees to the wallets themselves to keep development going. This is different than what coins like Smart Cash or Zcash or Dash do, where percentage of the block rewards goes to the development team. And this is also different than what has been existing for a very long time in the mining community, where a percentage of what you mine goes towards either the developer of the mine or the coin itself. And for example, one of the popular dual miners of Claymore, a certain percentage of your hash power actually goes to the Claymore developer. And that man has made a lot of beef off of this. And also, if you look at Grin, if you're mining a coin like Grin, a percentage actually goes to the Grin developers instead of you. So these are all different ways that these different networks are using to maintain their own infrastructure and create funds outside of trying to go to ICOs or outside investors because they want to maintain their independence. This, I don't like how he called it a tax, but at the same time, people understand what he's talking about there. And this is in place. Similar things are already in place all over the crypto ecosystem.
Yep, you nailed it.
I just want to mention, so at the moment I'm having a bit of a debate with Llama about how we were talking about US economy going down and the reasons why some people think it is, and major media outlets tend to not cover this stuff. Like you saw in the lead up to the housing crash, Peter Schiff would be invited onto these shows when he was saying, hey guys, this whole thing's gonna fall apart, it's a house of cards, and he'd be invited on as a laughing stock because he'd say, like, it's the housing bubble is going to collapse, housing prices are going to go down, and these people would laugh at him and say, that's hilarious, oh Peter, good for comic relief. That's never going to happen. Housing prices don't go down, scarcity, supply and demand, and meanwhile everyone's ignoring the fact of the fact that there are direct lines of credit going directly into Fannie and Freddie that basically have government mandates to underwrite certain amounts of loans, and these just keep getting larger and larger, and that this whole thing is just like blowing up to extreme proportions, and people weren't really talking about that. And I think that right now, a lot of people are still misled as to what caused the housing crash. So if there's one thing I'll say as we part, it would be to read Thomas Sowell's Housing Boom and Bust. I thought that was a great resource. There are other books I could recommend, such as Una MacDonald. She's actually a Labour politician from England who wrote a giant thick book. I've got it around here somewhere. Called American Dream Turned into an American Nightmare. But if you don't want a giant thick book, then start with Thomas Sowell's The Housing Boom and Bust. Super helpful.
Meltdown was also a good book to read on that.
Yeah. I mean, there are lots of these things. If you actually look at all of the stuff that the former head of BB&T Bank has written about this as well, then make sure that you take advantage of all of these resources. So it's just a lot of stuff out there that people aren't aware of. So John Allison is kind of one of my heroes. Actually, I love that guy. I think he's just so awesome. But he's written extensively about his experiences when the TARP bailouts came in. He refused to take any of the money from the TARP bailouts. His bank wasn't in the red at all, and so he actually walked away from his entire company that he'd built up rather than take the government money. So huge amount of kudos and hats off to him. No. But if anyone wants to learn more about that, maybe we'll do a whole show. Like I've done multiple shows in the past about this, but maybe it is worthwhile kind of recapping and going back into some of this stuff. But that is all the time that we have at the moment. I really appreciate all you guys being here. This is always such a great start to the weekend for me, even though my weekend doesn't really start yet because I go and create teasers and post on my 75 million different platforms that I like to keep up with. But it's just such a great way to kind of start winding down, just going over the news and chatting to the wonderful people that I have on the show, as well as the wonderful people in the chat. So thank you all so much for being here.
We love being here. Also, I could probably have a great discussion with Llama about the upcoming deflationary thing that I really am doubtful will actually happen. But I will stop talking about that right now.
No, let's go into Telegram. Let's move that into Telegram right now, Chris. I'll join you there. And because this is a common misconception. And I think that people, it's not often discussed, and generally conversations about this are shut down. So I think engaging in dialogue and just talking through some of these things is super helpful to a lot of people. So let's definitely continue that. And maybe we'll try and get Gene Epstein involved. If you wanted to tweet at Gene, he will give you all the data in the world. He's like I don't know how he retains that stuff, but I learned everything I know about the housing crash from him and from the books he's recommended, and just a wealth of other awesome resources out there. So thank you everyone, and thank you for bringing interesting discussions to the chat. Llama, thank you for bringing that discussion to the chat. That's something that we'll definitely continue. And a huge thank to Dragon Wolf Tech, aka Jason Nelson, for sending me a power chat. Really appreciate that. Same with Semt. Really appreciate that. And whoever Anonymous was. You guys are awesome. Thank you for using Bitbacker, and thank you to everyone being in the chat here. Blakely, Chris, go have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Oh, the ATM video is live. I shared the link, and you can go check it out on YouTube.
Awesome. I will add that to the video description so everyone can check that out.
Excellent. Have a great weekend, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh yeah, now we have to wait.